This episode of Afterthoughts was recorded on the 30th of April 2020. Every day, 34 people in their 20s and 30s are diagnosed with cancer.
On the 7th of July 2015, I was one of the 34.
On the 28th of August 2008, I was one of the 34.
These are the stories of what happens afterwards.
This is Afterthoughts.
Hi, Alice.
We spoke at the same time. That's a good start, isn't it?
You go.
Okay. Hi, Alice.
Hi, Toby. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I was trying to think of not just repeating the same thing that we say every time, but I filled that little sentence. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's been an interesting couple of weeks.
Yes. Give us the update from you.
Yeah. So my husband decided to get appendicitis in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
Which,
great timing.
Yeah. Excellent timing.
Yeah.
But it's fine. He's at home now. He's had his appendix out. He's recovering. But yeah, it's certainly been an interesting. What day is it today? It's Thursday, isn't it? So it's like a week since he went into hospital today. And he had his surgery on Friday evening, and then came home on Saturday. So yeah, that's been occupying quite a lot of my time. What have you been up to?
Well, I mean, not to say this is the same as your lovely husband's pain that he is in, but I think I've pulled a hamstring. I haven't pulled a hamstring. I think I've just got light strain, Alice. Again, not to the level of having my appendix out, but I'm doing the 434.
Yes, explain that.
Yeah, I'm doing for Trek Stock, and you know they're supporting the podcast, so thought I'd do some support back as well. And I have to do 34 days of exercise. And me and my partner decided to do so. We do 34 press ups, 34 sit ups, and 34 burpees.
I think you're absolutely bonkers. I really do.
I thought it was easy at first, and
burpees are so hard.
Yes, yeah, and that's the thing that I think has done the old hammy in. So that's my update. Day 4, and I want it to be over already.
Yeah, and we're still in lockdown, still very much in lockdown, aren't we?
Probably should mention that. That's why we're zooming away. I hope the audio is okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, you know, we're doing our best. That's all we can say, I guess. Has the leaf blower stopped outside your house?
Did it start up again?
No,
I don't know. It's gone. But if the leaf blower does start up, everybody, it is a leaf blower. We've learned from Chris's episode about that we should tell people when the sounds are there.
Right, exactly. And this is our last storyteller of the series, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah. Afterthoughts season 1 has flown by.
Yeah, and we've how many episodes have we had out now? We're on 5.
We're on 5. There's a couple more to go. I mean, and who is our last storyteller, Alex?
Oh, that's a nice link. Well done, you.
Thank you.
So I'm really excited to be joined today by the brilliant Lulu Socrates. I think that's how you say her surname. I should probably check, but I've been following Lulu on social media for ages. She was one of the first cancer accounts I found on social media, I think. And the thing I really love about Lulu is how, I was just saying this to Toby actually, how incredibly generous she is with what she's learned about life through her cancer experience. And that's part of the reason why I thought she'd make an amazing storyteller for Afterthoughts. And I'm really, really thrilled that she's going to be our last one. Have you met Lulu before?
I believe so. We have crossed paths in the past.
She has the most magnificent hair.
Well, I mean, our hair has changed quite a lot since lockdown. I've learned this is the thing that's happened in my life quite a lot, is I've learned how to use I think they call it a hair brush.
Yes, the hair brush. Yes,
I've been hair brushing because my hair is long.
And I have like a tiny little bun that is essentially all of my fringe, just like pulled back, scraped back off my head, off my face. So my fringe comes down to about like below my cheekbones now. It's so long.
There has been quite a lot of, I've been seeing some of the cancer community talking about the length of their hair, how they've never had hair this long before, and able to go out. So it's really interesting times.
Yeah, I haven't been able to put my hair in a ponytail. I mean, it's a pretty piss poor ponytail, but I haven't been able to put my hair in a ponytail since July 2015.
And on that note, there's that piss poor ponytail. We'll welcome Lulu.
There we go, we're recording. Hi Lulu.
Hi guys.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so nice to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here.
How are you enjoying your lockdown situation?
I have to admit I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, okay.
It really suits me. I'm really loving working from home, to the point where I don't want to go back into an office environment, but I know I have to. But also I feel I'm an introvert in that I get my energy from being solo. So I'm feeling very nourished and whole right now, but still feeling very connected to my friends and family. So I feel like I've got a great balance, and I'm having a really good time.
Yeah, I definitely think on a personal level it is the introvert's dream, isn't it? Like obviously the external factors, not great.
No, I have to say that, Alice. I'm really sorry. Like I'm not enjoying what's going outside in the outside world, you know. So I'm just on a personal bubble level.
Yeah.
What's been getting you through?
I think the fact that we've got technology really, really helps. I've been in various forms of self-isolation in the past with cancer, or being home for long periods of time, on hospital for long periods of time. So, but back then we didn't have all the technology to connect us. So I feel we're in a really great position right now. This had happened sort of 5 years ago. I don't know if we'd have coped so well. The fact that we have Zooms and Skypes and all these apps coming up where people can play games and socialise really help. And so I just feel like we've got so much access to and entertainment and tutorials and online fitness. Like there's just so much there for us. So technology is proven. You know, I think we have a love-hate relationship with technology a lot of the time, but I think it's really come into its own at the moment.
So Lulu, welcome to Afterthoughts. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and being our last storyteller of season 1. Season or series, Alice? Are we going American or?
Prob season.
Okay, season 1.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, bringing your stories to the podcast. We always like to start the podcast though by focusing on the person before the cancer, and so we have some quick fire questions for you. Should we mention that we know that you've listened to the other podcasts, so you might already know some of the answers.
It does also mean she knows what the wrong answer is.
Maybe.
Okay, no, it's okay. It wasn't my favourite.
Ah, okay.
I laughed so much because I listened to them consecutively.
Oh, brilliant!
So it was just by the third podcast, I was in giggles with the answer.
It's insane, isn't it?
So, Lulu, our first question for you on your identity is, what pronouns do you use?
She, her, please.
Who do people say that you look like, Lulu?
I don't know. I don't have anyone in mind. I have been thinking about this. I mean, I have a resemblance to my dad, some people say. I think in my younger years, for definite, at the height of Sex and the City, there was a comparison to Sarah Jessica Parker.
That's a good answer, though. Don't
really good
that's great. Thank you.
People might look at me now and go, "No, I don't see it," but it was 10 years ago, and I looked slightly different.
What was your first pet?
Hamster.
What was the hamster called?
Missy.
Oh. Where do you say you're from?
London.
And can you please tell us what your favourite soup is?
Not mushroom soup.
Ding, 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 ding,
No.
ding, ding, ding.
To be honest with you, controversial, I don't like soup. I have had a couple of soups this year. I've discovered a smoked haddock chowder by Covent Garden Soup Company. So I've had that a couple of times this year and quite liked it. But on the whole, I feel cheated with soup.
Oh, we both feel so passionately about soup, don't we? Especially like in the winter.
Potentially, this is the last time we would ask that question about soup, because you never know. If we do another season, Alice, we might change the questions up. Yeah. And I really love that your last answer is just don't like them at all.
No, I just think I've been cheated out of a meal, of a meal experience. It's not a meal experience.
Lulu, 3 words to describe yourself.
Do you know what? I did think about this overnight, and I couldn't. I've come up with so many wonderful words. I'm gonna just go with my gut right now. So I would say happy, passionate, and untamed, untamable. I don't know if that's untamed.
Ooh, I love that. Untamed. That's a really good one. That's very powerful, isn't it? Then, final question. What was your favourite childhood TV programme?
No one seems to have heard of this, which is bizarre because when I was younger, there were only 4 channels. But there was a programme called Out of This World that my sister and I were absolutely obsessed with, and to the point we made our own box set, so we recorded it every week. And the thing is, I've never come across anyone, and my sister and I were both of an age where we both enjoyed it. There's 4 years between us, but we both loved it. And yeah, I've never found anyone in either of our age groups that know of it, you know.
Lulu, could you please give us a brief outlook on what was your diagnosis and the treatment that you had?
Sure. So I was in my early 30s. I had been poorly for a while, but I genuinely thought it was just IBS and stress from work. I mentioned before I was in a really stressful job. So the symptoms are very generic with the cancer that I have. And because, you know, in your early 30s, you don't think about being sick really, you know, I was trying to fix myself with green juice and yoga, but I got progressively worse and worse, and went to see an IBS specialist I think it was October 2011. And luckily he picked up on it straight away. That was a Tuesday the 11th, I think. And then on the Thursday the 13th, I was in hospital. It happened very, very quickly. They had found a stage 4 tumour coming out of my pancreas, which ended up being a neuroendocrine tumour. So it's a very rare type of pancreatic cancer. So it's not as aggressive and as fast as normal pancreatic cancer. It's a hormone fed cancer, so it's slower growth. So I'd had it for a few years without knowing, and so by the time they found it, it was bigger than a grapefruit and had attached itself to most of my gastric system. And I had to start chemotherapy straight away with the intention to reduce the tumour because it was too big to operate on. And so I had 6 months of 3 different types of chemo cocktail mix. And then we managed to shrink it just enough to find 2 surgeons to operate. And that was in May 2012. And then I had chemo again after that until the October of the following year. So again, October 2012, just to sort of make sure there were no sort of loose cancer cells around. And then the journey really began after that, I would say.
Okay, so we are gonna start with a story of beyond a diagnosis. So obviously things change. possibly understatement of the century, when you get a cancer diagnosis. And we'd love to hear a story from you about something that happened to you beyond that diagnosis. So over to you.
Okay, so I think for me, it was 6 months after treatment had finished. So I had done the first lot of chemo, I had a very, very big life-saving operation, I had more chemo, and then everything was fixed and done, and you're left on your own to go and play. And I didn't know how to move forward, and everything I tried to go back to the person I was and the life I had, and that wasn't working for me. And I got more and more sick, mentally, in terms of mental well-being and my mental health, and physically I was left, the surgery and the chemo had left me probably more sick than I was before I started treatment. So I wasn't in a good place. I didn't know how to move forward, and I got directed to the Marie Curie Centre. It's a hospice in North London who have a outpatient centre on the top floor. I felt like a fraud, and I thought I didn't have a right to be there, because in theory I was cancer free now. And you spend the first day, you spend 2-3 hours with a doctor at the outpatient centre, who goes over everything with you, what you've been through, your illness, why you're there. And it was only at that point did I realise that I was very, very sick. Because I gave her my whole history and explained to this woman who didn't know anything about me what had happened. And then I said to her, well, I don't know why I can't go back to normal. I just want to go back to normal and I can't do it. I don't know why. And it was this doctor who just basically said, because you're very, very sick. And I don't know why it took that for me to realise at that stage. But it did, and it kind of hit me in a way that it hadn't hit me before when I was going through treatment and when I was in and out of hospital. I got on with it. I just didn't really kind of identify as a patient or a sick person. I didn't give myself license to feel that way. But I think to heal and to move forward, at some point, you have to do that. And it's a different point in the game for different people. You know, there isn't a right or wrong. It just happened to hit me 6 months after treatment. And I guess that was the beginning of my healing and my moving forward. Some parts of it are very clear and some parts are still very fuzzy. I think I went home and I remember crying. There are very few moments of the cancer journey where I cried. So I guess they stand out. And I cried out of relief. Something had clicked in that conversation, and it just, this whole sort of floodgate of relief came out, and I felt just very hopeful for the first time in a long time that I had a way through. Because at that point, before I'd gone to see them, I was feeling very bleak. My life felt very bleak. I didn't know how to move forward. I remember just thinking, if this is life now, then I would have rather died. You know, so it was a really bleak time. So to have a conversation like that, to give me a tiny ray of hope, was just a very powerful thing. And I just kind of, I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Yeah, I went home and I cried. And I thought, oh wow, I feel heard, I feel understood, and I feel that something can be done. So I was prescribed a physiotherapist, I was prescribed a counsellor, I was prescribed art therapy, I was prescribed a reflexologist, just various things. I mean, the physio was probably the most important thing because I had no idea how to physically move again. They had cut me open to the point where movement was very, very difficult, even just walking. So that was a real big game changer. Yeah, so they kind of prescribe you things and you come away with a group of experts that can help you. And it's so empowering. At the time, I never expressed my gratitude. And it's something that is still playing on my mind all these years later. And I often want to send a card or a letter to say thank you. And the amount of times I've sat there with a pen and paper, I want to express my gratitude, because that was, you know, it was a real turning point for me, and I just don't know how to express that. So I'm still trying to find words all these years later.
Thank you, Lulu. So our next section is called Invisible Impacts, and it is an opportunity for us to share some stories of some of the things that perhaps aren't always seen after a diagnosis. So could you share a story for us?
I think for me, it was purpose and transformation that may have not been visible to the outside world. Given my age, you know, I was still in my 30s, as you know, most of your listeners and you guys can relate to, you know, at that stage in life, you have a tick list and a purpose, and you're told, you know, I had my career and I was going to do this, I was going to do that, and then cancer took everything away from me, and I didn't know what I wanted to go back to. I didn't know maybe what my purpose was anymore. It definitely wasn't my career and to get married. You know, those things just weren't part of my plan, but I didn't know what my new plan looked like. So I think lack of purpose at that point was a really big impact on my mental well-being when I walked into the Marie Curie Centre at that time, which we discussed earlier. You know, when I felt at my absolute lowest, lack of purpose definitely played a part of that depression. And through their help, I was getting a little bit stronger. And I started to feel that I could put myself back together. They gave me the techniques and the things to start putting myself back together again. And then a few months down the line, my psychologist, who I was seeing at the Royal Free, recommended that I step back and away from the Marie Curie Centre, because she felt that by going there, I was keeping myself labelled and stuck in the cancer world. You know, being stuck and labelled as a cancer patient. And I understood what she was saying, but I felt lost because I didn't know where to go at that point. I understood that I had to do it for myself, but so luckily I live in London. I have a background in health and well-being, and so I sat down and I started reaching out to the professionals around me in terms of nutrition and fitness, alternative therapists, yoga, all of that stuff. And as the months went on, I started to get stronger and I started to feel a bit like myself again. And I remember taking up swimming, and I had just done my second session. And you know, Alice, what it's like when you're swimming, you feel really alive. And I remember having a shower afterwards and just feeling absolute joy for the first time in such a long time. And I just felt big wave come over me, and I was like, you have to share this. You have to share what you're doing with other people, because I don't want anyone to ever feel like I did when I walked into the Marie Curie Centre all those months ago. Not knowing where I was in the cancer game, not knowing how to move forward, not understanding what was going on. So that wave, that feeling of helping and extending and sharing what I was doing, I guess was the beginning of Lulu and me. At that point, Instagram was relatively new still. I had never heard of it. A friend set me up, and I wasn't quite sold because at that point I didn't like social media. I wasn't on it. But it gave me a platform to start sharing what I was doing. And I guess that then led to my new purpose all by itself. You know, it was a transformative year. And then I found my purpose, and then I just started feeling that, I don't know, that new sense of myself for the first time. I feel that we need to move forward. We have to grieve. And again, as I was saying before, you know, it hits people at different stages. But part of that moving forward process is grieving, and it's grieving your old self and your old life. and it's learning to accept which parts of you are grieving for, and it will look differently for different people. You will never go back to who you were before. It's impossible when you have a trauma, and it's not cancer specific. Trauma it happens to people in all shapes and sizes and different guises, and it looks different for different people. But when you go through a trauma, you are never the same again, and you have to accept that. There's an acceptance part there. I think after acceptance, you then have to grieve the part of you that is no longer around, and it could be part of you, it could be part of your lifestyle, and then you can start looking forward to the person you are becoming. It was a really important part of getting me to where I am today. Looking back now, I wasn't happy before the cancer diagnosis, and it's really funny that I wanted to go back to that part of my life, because those few years beforehand I was grossly unhappy. So why I wanted to go back is beyond me, and I think there's different elements to why I was unhappy, but one of them was my attempt at trying to conform to societal pressures. Part of it's my community that I was in, part of it is just society, been telling women where to be and what to do at certain parts, which is a slightly different narrative now out there, which is great. But this is, quite a long time ago, where women, were being sold something different, and we had to be everything and do everything and run around in hills and, build these great big empires and be mothers and, all of this stuff. And I totally signed up for it, but it was not, I guess, where I wanted to be or what I wanted to be doing. So it's a really big internal struggle for me, which caused my unhappiness. And I think cancer stripped it all away. And it's a very, I see this on Instagram, I've seen this quote on Instagram, and it really hit home. It's like, in the haste to go back to our old lives, we have to look at what we want to go back to. And I think cancer makes you really look at that. Having that time out with yourself, there's a lot of time with yourself and your own thoughts. And so you are forced to kind of go, okay, why was I unhappy? What wasn't right for me? And then I think as well, maybe because of the age, at this point I was coming into my mid to late 30s. I got to an age where I just wanted to do things my way. And it was a really liberating experience to go, actually, I don't want to go back. That wasn't important to me, or I want to do this my way, not at a certain point in my life that society is telling me to do it. So it was a really liberating process to shed and to sort of click with what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it and what worked for me. And that gave me so much inner peace and calm that I had not had in my life before cancer. And as I said before, it's not like everything's massively changed. I still want a lot of the same things that I did before, but it's just I want to do them in a way that feels right for me, not because I have to tick a box.
We're going to move on now to talking about those around us. Obviously, cancer happens to the patient, the individual, but we all know from our experiences that it happens to lots of people around us as well. So, Lulu, we would love to hear a story or stories from you about those around us. Ready when you are.
Thank you. I always say to people who have been through the cancer bubble, I always ask them, was your friendship landscape during cancer what you thought it would be? If I had asked you to put your money on who was going to be around and step forward to you before the diagnosis, does that picture marry where you would have put your, bet your dollar? And every single time people say no. What you think, who you think is going to step forward and be around and support you is never the reality. Good ways and bad ways, I had experiences where people disappeared, close friends who I thought were close friends. I had some people who I hadn't spoken to for over 10, 15 years come step forward from nowhere. I lost contact with them, and somehow they found me and they showed up in ways that blew my mind. I got closer to, I guess, friends who I thought were just sort of social friends, really came forward and were just my rocks, and we are left with such a strong, powerful relationship. And then, you know, equally it was an opportunity for me to maybe lose some friends who I had been meaning to for a while, because they didn't make me feel good. So yeah, people kind of come forward or not, you know, it's never who you think it's going to be. People surprise you. I think cancer just shows you who your true friends are, but also, you know, it brings out the best and the worst in people. Again, a bit like COVID, another similarity, you know. I think we're really seeing people now in a different way. So yeah, it's a very interesting experience. I tended not to want people around me at the hospital. I kept my world very small and private during it. I wasn't on social media then. I didn't allow people to, apart from the month I was in hospital. I wanted friends around, and friends came to visit, but it was a very selected few. But the support came in other ways. It wasn't always with hospital visits and things. It was just, you know, texts and emails, and, you know, I was really, really sick, and often I couldn't text back at all, or for long periods of time. And some friends didn't let that stop them. They just texted me, I'm thinking about them. And it wasn't to exchange in a dialogue, they were thinking about me, sorry. It wasn't to exchange in a dialogue. It was just sending love. You know, I had friends who wrote to me. I've got a box of cards and letters, and I had not in gifts, but it was more just, it wasn't the gifts so much, it was just the love coming through in messages. And it wasn't because they wanted to talk to me or exchange in big conversations. It was just, I love you, I'm here, I love you, I'm here. And it's very powerful, very, very powerful when you're sick, to have that flooding in. And like I said, it came from people I wasn't expecting to, you know, and I will forever hold them in my heart for just what they did for me during that time. I don't think I can ever express, and I don't think I'll ever understand actually what that text or that email meant, you know. And there was one friend, bless her, for some reason I just never managed, the timings, I never managed to reply to her for the best part of a year, and she would still show up with love, big love. And then when I kind of got through it, and I was like, I'm so sorry, but you know, and I've spent like my whole life now is trying to repay her with this love that she flooded in. Yeah, people are amazing, aren't they? I mean, they just, you can't get through cancer without people. You can't.
I saw a beautiful quote this morning on Laura Lee Dockerell is talking a lot about postpartum psychosis at the moment. And there was a lovely quote that she put on social media today, and she's just got a book out, but she said, and actually of all of the medicines that were prescribed to me, the one that served me best was love. And I was just like,
oh wow, yeah. Oh, I got goosebumps. That's so lovely. Yeah. Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, you can't get through it, can you? I think also, you know, there are things that I would do differently in my time if I was to do it again, but you know, you have to forgive yourself because you did the best you could with what you knew then, and now you know things differently. So you know, I try not to dwell on that too much. But I think back then when I was through it, there was a frustration for me in that I wanted certain people to show up in a certain way. So depending on their role in my life, you know, I had a preconception that if you love me, then this is how you have to turn up and help me and serve me and love me. And they didn't, and they did it their way, and I didn't see that. I was focused on, you're not giving me what I need from you in the way that I want it. And I lost, and it's not something that I knew how to do until only recently. It's allowing people to show up for you and love you in the way that they love and then they can give you. You know, and I look back now, and I may have been an ungrateful, spoiled brat to certain people at certain times because they weren't loving me the way that I wanted to be loved from them. And I lost sight of the fact that they, you know, they can just turn up and play computer games, and that is their love and that is their support. You know, so that's something kind of it's a regret and a learning on my part, and I have learned to do that more in more recent years, is letting people just turn up as themselves and love me for themselves, and not tell them or impose on them how I want to be loved.
Thank you very much, Lulu. Lulu, we are moving on to the section which is gift or grievance. And with the conversation with the other storytellers, we've kind of seen this is a scale. And we wondered if you could tell us a story of, your feelings of where you are on that scale at the moment.
I am indifferent. I don't really it's like the whole soup thing again, isn't it? You know,
Right.
Spanners in the work, left, right, and centre. No, I don't see it as either. It is what it is. It's something that I was meant to go through. It was something that, it was the trauma that I was meant to have. And it is what it is. And, you know, I have days where I have more days now that I'm at peace with it. And, but there are times where I'm frustrated with it. But you can't really go into either spheres too much. You know, you can't sit there and hate what's happened, because it's happened. It's just no one goes through life unscarred. We are all given trauma in different ways. And going back to what I was saying before, there's an acceptance with it. So to say that I don't have a grievance with it is not to say that I don't have a frustration with it. There is a frustration some days, but I don't see it as this big traumatic, this big thing that happened to me and I wish it never happened. And life doesn't work that way. Life happens, right? At the same time, I'm not sitting here going, oh, life gave me lemons and I made lemonades, and like, oh, cancer changed my life and I'm a better person for it. It's a process, you know. I'm really happy with where I am, and it happened to be because I went through cancer, but equally, you know, it was what I had to go through to get here. But it could have been another trauma, you know. I've had other traumas in my past that didn't get me there, and it happened to be cancer that got me there. So I don't know, I don't look at it either way. I don't go, oh, it's a blessing, or I don't sit there hating it. It just is what it is, and I just get on with it, really. Yeah, and I think it's a growing scale. So I definitely started at the grievance side. Even then, it wasn't, oh, I hate cancer. It was just frustration that I didn't know how to be me. And it was that inability to look after myself. So there was a frustration. I would say it's more of a frustration. I never wished I never had cancer. I never was like, woe is me, or why did this happen, or any of that stuff. It's, you know, there was a frustration there for sure, and I wasn't happy. But that was, again, the unhappiness wasn't just of the cancer. It was an unhappiness that was there before, you know. Definitely, as time has gone on, that feeling has lessened, and I have, without sounding too cliche, I've never been happier in my life. Never, ever. I'm annoyingly happy. I wake up, I'm the person that I never used to like ridiculously happy morning people before, and I am that annoying, ridiculously happy morning person now. And I'm so happy, and I catch it a lot. I don't take it for granted. It always surprises me because I was so unhappy before. And so when I kind of catch it, I just want to squeeze myself. And I know that it's not a result of, I know dealing with cancer really forced me to look at my life and rebuild it in a way that makes me happy. So how can I really begrudge that experience? How can I ever really hate it too much? And yes, there are days where I am bedbound and frustrated because I want to go out and play and, you know, work until midnight like I used to. But that's so short-lived because I'm happy. So I have this, I don't know, it just flips. But it's definitely, I guess it's more of a gift now, I guess, listening to myself process it, maybe, But again, it's a cumulative journey, and cancer was just part of that. I have to plan my time meticulously, right? So for a night out, there's a lot of prep work. I have to prep the days before, and I have to have a buffer the days after. And by prep, I mean, eat well, certain way, eat a certain way, make sure that I've worked out, but not too much, got good night's sleep. Then I can go and have a night out on the RAS in the shape that I want it to be, because I do like to party. And so I can do it the way I want to, at the full capacity of, party the way I want to. And then I have to have days to recover from that physically. So that is a frustration, I would love to be spontaneous. I would love to just be spontaneous without any prep. And I would love to party for 2-3 days on end. I can't do that. So there are times where, in the summer or on holidays, particularly holidays, when you're out with a group of friends, I went to Croatia a couple of years ago with girlfriends. Last year was in Ibiza, which is, I wanted to party for 2 days, and I couldn't party 2 days in a row. And you're in Ibiza, but you just can't, So there are frustrations there. But again, it's been so many years now that there's an acceptance that I've come to peace with, that it is what it is. And the good stuff still outweighs the bad stuff. It literally take me 2-3 coffees before cancer. It would take me 2-3 coffees before anyone was allowed to talk to me. So there was like a rule in the office not to talk to me before 10 o'clock, which people took very, very seriously. Whereas now, I just wake up and we can have a full-blown conversation, and I'll be annoyingly it's like Care Bears, just blast, sunshine everywhere. It's so annoying even talking about it. I know I annoy people in the office, because I come in every morning, I'm like, hello. And I catch myself, and I'm just like, oh God, they hate you. But at the same time, I'm not going to change now. It's just accept me as I am.
We're going to move on now to talking about the lost conversations, and we're having loads of conversations now that we've never usually had about cancer, but the young adult community generally, we feel like there are still some conversations that we are not having enough. Have you got any thoughts on this, Lulu?
I have loads of thoughts. I mean, literally, we could talk for hours on this. I'm going to try and condense it. We are so much better now at talking about, even using the cancer word, when I got diagnosed back in 2011, people were shocked that I was going, oh, I have cancer, and not using the C word, or, just all the sort of secret words around cancer. The fact that we can say cancer now and not get overly emotional about it is great. I think social media, I think Instagram in particular, has really come into its own for the cancer community. It is enabling so many conversations, not just for people that are in treatment, but also for those who are out of treatment and moving forward and years down the line. I didn't know at the time that it was going to be a forever process. And I genuinely thought, you finish treatment, you have a big party, and then you go back to life. So there was no conversation about all the stuff that happens afterwards, the whole healing process, how long it takes for your body to get back to normal, if it ever does go back to your old normal. There was no conversations about the mental well-being impact. There was no conversations about what it does to relationships, or your finances, or your sex life, or your skin, or putting weight on and not wanting to get dressed in the morning. You know, there was no conversation about going back to work and what that looks like. There was no conversation. I think when I first signed up to Instagram to start up Lulu and Me, I don't think anyone was using the hashtag life after cancer, I think, until I started using it. So back then, that's not a long time ago really, these conversations weren't happening. And then in the more recent years, it's just flourished and grown, and there are so many people really steering that conversation forward and having big conversations out in the open, and taking the taboo away, and just connecting stories and people so they don't feel alone when they're going through all this stuff. And I do really think that Instagram has had a massive role to play in that. Charities are taking on these conversations they weren't before, you know. Yeah, there's just so much good conversation. I still feel that we are at the beginning of it though. I feel that we have such a long way to go, because the statistics are showing that, you know, 1 in 2, 1 in 3, I forget what it is now, of people are going to be affected by cancer, are going to have cancer. So with numbers like that, we need to really grow these conversations to serve the population, and have them in I don't know. I think it's happening. I think it's a really positive thing that's going on right now. I think conversations will just continue to grow, because there's so many different, you know, no two people are the same. So someone might have an issue with one part of recovery, and some people might have a different, so all these conversations need to be had, you know. So there's not just one conversation that needs to be focused on. For my part in this, it's why I set up Lulu and Me. It was to have these conversations that I couldn't have with anyone else at the time. I needed to have those conversations, you know. I didn't know it at the time. I started Lulu and Me just to share, as almost like an outward communication, and I wasn't quite expecting all this feedback from people saying, me too, and I was like, what do you mean? And I had no idea that I was talking to people who are going through exactly the same as me. And that's how it all kind of grew. And then I just feel like that's kind of shaping where I take Lulu and Me as well. It's that whole Me Too part that I love, that people need to talk, people need to hear that other people are going through that experience. And it's finding your community, because there's so many great conversations being had on Instagram and in festivals and in charities and at events, and you know, but at the same time it's different conversations, and people need to plug into the one that fits them. You know, the conversation that you, Alice, may need to have will look different to the conversation I will need to have, which will look different to what Toby needs, right? Our needs are different because we're different people. So it's about almost finding your tribe within a tribe. Like the cancer community is really big, and then it's just finding the community within that gives you what you need at that stage in your life. And you know, I think for so long we focused on the young and then the end of life as well. But you know, what I want to focus on mainly is women in their 30s, 40s and 50s, because typically middle-aged women are just not spoken to enough. Cancer, no cancer, you know, we're kind of like the forgotten group. And so I really want to keep steering that conversation to women in that age group, and hopefully be a tribe for them. There are 3 women who very, very early on would just write, going, whether it's DM or out in the post, just saying, I had no idea that other people felt the same way. We struck up a friendship, and I still am very close to that. Well, one of the women has passed away, but she's always in my thoughts. And then the other 2 women I'm still very close to. One is slightly younger and one is considerably older. So it's quite interesting that I've connected with both of them in the same way. But again, I think it's because no one was having that conversation at the time, right? I seem to be one of the first ones that I know of in the UK on Instagram that was saying, I'm no longer in the cancer bubble in terms of I'm no longer in treatment, but I'm really still struggling, and I'm still healing, and I'm still learning. So I think that's what people connected to at that time.
last section. Perfect. All right.
Story time for Don't Laugh. So, a moment from the experience in treatment or after treatment, just after a diagnosis, basically, of something that you have found fairly amusing.
You know what? There are quite a few moments actually, because I really used humour to get me through. So I did, to some people's shock, I did probably laugh at stuff a bit too much. But that's what helped me, right? So there are so many moments that I could call upon, but I think my favourite always has to be, and I love asking this of people who have been through chemo, is to share their chemo fog stories. Because it's just people get up to the most bizarre things when your brain isn't fully in gear. I mean, I found phones in fridges and cucumbers in drawers. Just daily crazy stuff. I think my favourite, and we still giggle about it now. So at the time, I think I'd just finished the second series of chemo, and I was spending probably a week a month with my best friend in her house. She had just had a baby, so she was on maternity leave. I was in my early recovery, and so we kind of used that time to really just hang out, right? And so I was staying at her house, probably like a week a month, and there was one afternoon, and we said, "Oh, should we have a cup of tea?" So I said to her, I feel strong, I feel well, I'm going to put the kettle on, I'm going to make you a cup of tea this time, because she was always making me tea. So she's like, "Oh, are you sure?" And I said, yeah, I'm off. And I went to the kitchen, and I, took the mugs out, filled the kettle up, put the kettle on, put the tea bags in. And when I sat back down with her and waiting for the kettle to boil, and I would get up and carry on making the tea, and we started chatting away, and then a smell hit us. She's like, "What's that smell?" And I was like, I don't know. So we ran into the kitchen, and I had put the electric kettle on the hob and put the flame on. And I don't know why. I had never had one of those cooker kettles before. I didn't have one at home. I don't ever use electric kettles. So yeah. And we just looked at this melting electric kettle on her hob, gas hob. And it still makes us giggle. That was my favourite chemo brain. I mean, there's no other reason. It was definitely the chemo brain.
Thank God you guys had like a relative, thank God your sense of smell wasn't affected by chemo, because if it was, that would have been a fire.
Oh God, for sure. Yeah.
And it's good that it wasn't a fire, because now you can laugh about it.
So Lulu, we like to always do our afterthoughts on afterthoughts, and this is the last of the season, we've decided, haven't we, rather than series, Alice?
Yeah.
So afterthoughts on today's episode. Alice, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think there's something I talk about a lot and think about a lot is grief. And my afterthought on today's episode is that possibly a lost conversation is that we all need to get better at talking about the sort of grief that we feel when we've been through cancer treatment. Lulu, what's your afterthought on today's episode?
And can I also just use this very quickly to say thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on.
So much fun. I really loved it. And I also have just loved what you're doing with this. I'm so excited there are more seasons to come, because you guys are an amazing duo, and I just feel like you should be DJs and keep doing podcasts and keep chatting, because you guys are great at it. But also you are going back to what we were saying before, and this is, I guess, my afterthought, really. My afterthought is that we really need to keep having these conversations. It's not a one-off. We need to keep having them. We need to keep growing them. We need to keep accessing different people. So every conversation in any format is wonderful and just needs to keep growing.
Excellent, thank you. And Toby, last but not least, finishing off the season, what is your afterthought on today's episode of Afterthoughts?
I think what's really stuck with me is that, and yeah, how people love you in different ways, and they give you love in a way that they feel they can do and want to share with you. And yeah, that's really stuck with me throughout this whole episode. And
that's the most emotional I've ever seen Toby.
Thank you so much, Lulu, for coming and spending time with us.
Oh, thanks. Let's do it again.
It's been glorious. Thank you so much, Lulu.
Thank you so much for doing all this, guys. Honestly, I know it's a lot of work, and it's not easy. So
We've loved it, haven't we?
We've had a great time.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
If today's episode of Afterthoughts has sparked any thoughts or feelings that you'd like to speak to somebody about, we would really recommend you grabbing a cup of tea with a friend or dropping them a WhatsApp. Or you could speak to our fantastic charity supporters, Trekstock. Trekstock get young adults in their 20s and 30s moving again, physically, socially and psychologically, when cancer has stopped them in their tracks. Find out more at www.trekstock.com. Afterthoughts is produced by Alice May Purkis and Toby Peach from Beyond Arts, with sound design by Kieran Lucas. Thank you.